I would like you to imagine that you're one of these people, seemingly running from something massive looming over the crowd as everyone runs in fear. As you cross a makeshift bridge from building to building, you reach a room and begin to catch your breath, before a man tells you that the monster has eaten everyone else. And in that moment, that man notices a shadow looming over him. And as we turn the page, this happens. What I've just described are the very first pages of Bibliomania, a manga written by Orville and illustrated by Machiro, which for whatever reason is read left to right as opposed to the norm in Japanese media, right to left. It is so unknown that it even lacks a My Anime List page. Like, come on, even goddamn High School Musical has a My Anime List page. This is just sad. Bibliomania is this weird yet beautiful story about a girl called Alice. And yes, this is definitely not just ripped off from Alice in Wonderland, as she wakes up in an empty white room. And before I start analyzing everything in this bizarre manga ripoff, I would like to warn you that this story is best experienced blind. So if you haven't, I recommend reading it before coming back here. Please come back as I depend on internet numbers to pay my electricity bills. Alright, let us begin. This room is known as room 431, and Alice eventually realizes this as she tries to enter room 430, before being surprised by this weird snake thing who tells her that this room she's in is basically a cognition of the mind in which anything she wishes for is possible. And he proves this by summoning delicious food out of thin air. However, before leaving, he warns her not to leave her room. Of course, she ignores the warning and leaves anyway, only to realize that something is forming on her hand. The serpent appears again to warn her that if she goes away from her room, her body will begin to slowly rot. The manor also possesses 430 other guests who are all in the previous rooms, and the goal of this serpent guy is to fill up a new room until the drumroll please, room 666. So scary. Once there are 666 rooms, a party will begin where everyone who attends it will be forced to stay in the manor until the end of time supposedly. On the surface, this does sound quite bad, but once you think about it a bit more, would you really want to leave? I mean, this room is a cognitive space where anything is possible. A life in there would never get boring or not fun. But Alice, on the other hand, seemingly wants to leave without a second thought. The serpent informs her that there is a way to leave, which is to reach the last room before 666 rooms form. But remember, the further you go from your design room, the more you will rot before becoming a skeleton. But Alice is unfazed by this, and takes the step into room 430, singing a song as she walks through the torii gate before being greeted by a massive Japanese themed court. We quickly find out that this court belongs to a very massive man that is seemingly cosplaying as a samurai who appears to be the judge. And before we know it, a strange man with a cube for a head drops down to the trial. This man is held on trial for the sins he committed, which involved him bullying a student so badly that it drove him to try to end his life, ultimately failing, as he claims he did this just because it was fun, truly showing that this man lacks any sort of empathy. Upon hearing this, the judge immediately chops his head off, before suddenly the exact same man drops into the court and the entire process repeats itself, over and over again. We find out that the judge of this court is the same person who was bullied by this man, and that he had been doing this for years. I would like to remind you that this room, just like any other room, is a mindscape where anything you imagine is possible. I would also like to remind you to subscribe and join the Discord, link in description. Anyways, this quite literally means that this guy's hatred goes so far that he's willing to dedicate his entire existence into taking revenge against this man over and over again. And yeah, this man does indeed seem like a horrible person, but you have to remember that we're only seeing a version of him seen through the lens of the judge. We do not actually know if what this man did was for fun, or if the people who were supposedly watching really did nothing. Heck, the person who is doing this whole trial may be even more cruel than whoever bullied him, especially because he's willing to go to such lengths to inflict pain to this man for eternity. But that is what I think Bibliomania does extremely well. After leaving the room and going through several rooms after that, Alice finds herself in a bizarre room that seems to be lacking floor. The serpent then tells her that the occupant of this room wished to become a bird, and goddamn does this panel go hard. I would really like to praise the art in this manga. Every panel is drawn beautifully, and whoever has done it truly knows their craft. This segment wasn't originally planned, but it's here to stay now, so yeah. Back to the story, I guess. The reason why this person wanted to become a bird is basically because they were sick of reality. And there are a lot of things you can relate to in that statement. Reality is tough and unpredictable. Sometimes you really wish you could just escape into a dream world like this and never have to worry about anything. The serpent adds to this, saying that if you truly could have anything, why would you even bother leaving? But Alice completely denies this. She says that she does not want to live in a world of lies, wanting wanting to experience the reality of the world before she inevitably continues forward. Fast forward a bit and we cut to room 385. We could see that the rot has started to really consume Alice's body as she goes through each room, but she doesn't really seem to care, just continuing to sing her song and walk further, before she is stopped by a massive monster as a hero crashes down from the sky to save her in a cool flash. This is the space mobile prince, Erakram. I hope I said that right. Anyways, he's basically a personification of this extremely popular superhero in the real world, and as mentioned before, this room is his mind, in which he can control his own battles and basically pause them. As he destroys the monster, more start coming. But here is where we notice something weird. The monster seems to be shouting the word Verk over and over again, like they're taunting Erakram himself. Despite this, he just kills them and then hot girls come to congratulate him. But not before the big bad of this room comes to face him. The good old shooting star sorcerer whatever. Suddenly Erakram initiates a swap, and in that moment we can see that underneath that facade, he's just a really old, overweight man who struggles with minuscule things like working a basic job or even leaving his room. Even though Erakram wins this fight with ease, it shows us that no matter what you wish for in these rooms and how much control you have in them, your problems always come to haunt you, especially if they're unresolved. And this is honestly one of my favorite rooms of Bibliomania for that exact reason. After this room, there is seemingly a jump in time, as we see Alice entering many disturbing, strange, or even tranquil rooms, each one housing a different type of individual. We're talking about a person who literally turned their whole room into TVs and speakers, a strange astronaut thing, and a very not safe for work woman who creeps me out. Thank you and goodbye. But the more Alice walks through these rooms, of course, the more she's rotting. And by now, she's already in quite a bad state before she reaches room 285. Now, every single room before this one was bizarre and some were outright disturbing. However, this one in particular is nothing like either of those. Instead, it feels like a normal living room. And as she steps into it, she finds a normal family having lunch and asks if the man at the center of the table wishes to go to the outside world like she does. To which the man threatens to call the police. The serpent shows up, of course, and explains that this man was once a teacher. However, it seemed that his family didn't really seem to enjoy being around him and grew distant with time, making him believe that he was the problem. Which, you know, knowing Bibliomania, he probably was to an extent. So he turned to a lot of alcohol, and as a lot of time passed, he basically started to go completely insane, which is how he got sucked into this room and created a perfect version of his desired family, a place filled with his insanity. I think this room in particular is very hard to analyze compared to the other ones, as it bears a lot of similarity to Erakram's room of problems catching up to him no matter what. But it also depicts a broken man who seemingly just wanted to be with his family, unfortunately losing himself in the process. Of course, Alice just roasts him and leaves the room, and now she finds herself in room 276. This room in particular is inhabited by a beautiful woman who asks Alice what is the purpose of going to the outside world, stating that the outside world is nothing but pain and suffering. And yeah, just like everything in Bibliomania, you can tell that this woman is crazy, but not in the sense you may think. She's even crazier. This woman was born with some sort of sickness that completely ruined her life, forcing her to be confined to a hospital bed, with her family not really caring about her and seemingly just wanting her to die already so they can stop paying for hospital bills. So she runs away and attempts to end her life when she finds a book, and this is how she gets transported to her room. Then she turns into the skeleton thing and Alice leaves the room with a somber expression. This is actually one of the saddest rooms of Bibliomania. I can kind of see why this woman deserves to stay in her room more than anyone we have seen so far. She probably did nothing wrong, she was just born in the wrong circumstances and the people around her despise her for it, which in turn would cause her to become deranged to this level. And yeah, that is just really sad. Anyways, moving on, in room 268 we see Alice, completely overtaken by the rot, barely resembling her past self, as the serpent tells her that the occupant of this room also wished to reach room 0, but due to the rot, his whole body turned into these weird paper lines of memories. Then we get a massive revelation. The serpent tells Alice that it is not actually room 0 but page 0, meaning that this whole manor is actually a book. The book that transported the woman in the previous room and most likely everyone else to this false reality. However, Alice does not seem to care, of course, and leaves the room completely ignoring the serpent's questions. This greatly annoys the serpent, who reveals to us that room 0 is meant to be unreachable, and that he's really sick of granting every single occupant their wish. There is also something much more sinister going on behind the scenes of this all. Upon heading through the door, Alice seems to wake up in room 255, where her body is completely restored to normal through the usage of some weird flask thing. Suddenly, a creepy man shows up and presses the button to let Alice out. He cloned himself so that he he could research the book at a much faster pace than a normal human would. And dang, that is pretty respectable. And again, I'm going to simp over the art for a second, cause goddamn does this room go hard. We can see how these clones work together to research their goals in unity. And the attention to detail here is what I really want to emphasize. Anyways, the man explains that he found Alice by the entrance to the room and injected her with a drug that suppresses the rot, but only once. He also explains the secret of the manor by letting his brain run wild as a dog. Yeah, I am not joking. Anyways, when the book reaches 666 pages, it basically squashes together all of the people inside it and merges them into an extremely powerful being the serpent wishes to become. He also explains why nobody has the desire to leave, because the more wishes that are granted, the less the person wants to leave, practically brainwashing them into staying in this false paradise, unknowingly evading their grim fate. The book is also made so that the closer you are to room 0, no matter what you do, you will rot immediately. This is why the people in rooms below 100 cannot even go to their neighbors' rooms, as they will immediately die. The clones warn Alice to not go further as she will not be able to survive the rot, but of course she just brushes it off and asks them which one is the original, to which they argue. I think this is also an important panel that tells us that even this man, whose desire was to find out the truth of the manor, fell into some sort of insanity at the end. After this, Alice is seemingly running through the doors at full speed, and man, are these rooms just more and more messed up the further she goes. And by about room 150, her body is completely rotted, not even a husk of her former self. The serpent shows up again and tells her that everything will be fine as long as she goes back to her room, but she just rushes past him. As Alice opens the door to room 100, she falls to the ground as the serpent claims that she's dead. After an awkward moment, she suddenly begins to break out of the rot, much to the serpent's fear, and we get this beautiful panel of pure awesomeness. Now, there is probably something you've all been wondering this whole video, and that is just, who is Alice? Well, you see, there is something I've been hiding from you. I am so sneaky, right? Bibliomania sort of hides this whole story throughout an unrelated section in each chapter, where we see Alice doing things days before entering the manor. Let's dissect them. 5 days before entry to the manor, we see Alice walking in an abandoned city and coming across a doll, picking it up and tearing it apart, until she smells something and continues walking as a butterfly lands on the ripped doll. A day later, we can see her navigating this ruined landscape with ease, going across traffic wires like she's in a circus, and finally reaching some sort of massive cannon. Next, we confirm that she's looking for something indicated by her singing, coming across all of these weird mechanic structures that don't really make sense. It feels like all of these machines were once used for some sort of warfare, considering how many turrets and cannons we see. But then we also see these weird things that I have no idea how to explain. And then she finally finds it. And of course, the thing she was looking for was the book. We get a panel of Alice sniffing the book, saying that it smells like her little brother as she takes the book to her supposed home. After that, we finally get an explanation as to how Alice got to the manor in the first place. And after that, something really weird happens. The camera pans to reveal that Alice does not clean her room. I'm just kidding. Alice's room seems to be some sort of massive treasure trove, but the weird thing is that there are actual humans trapped in here, screaming for help, saying that the beast is returning, begging to be released. Now, you may be thinking, what does this actually tell us? Well, to be real with you, I felt the same way when I first read this manga. Bibliomania is a very cryptic story at its core, and it actually took me a reread to fully understand it. I am not saying the same thing may apply to you, but I think most will be able to relate to that. Either way, we know that Alice is definitely not someone who shouldn't be taken seriously, and she seems to be way more knowledgeable about everything that is happening than everyone else. She also seems to like to mess with things like she ripped that doll or literally has a goddamn pandemonium in her room. All of this leads us to believe that Alice is not actually human, but something else entirely, considering she appears to have a little brother indicated by the smell of the book. And this is where Bibliomania really starts to open up. As Alice gets up from her supposed death, she seems completely unfazed, while the serpent is in sheer terror. As she gets closer and closer to room 0, the more frightened the serpent becomes. And this is honestly one of those moments where you feel genuine satisfaction, as the villain of the story is finally getting for what he deserves, right? Well, as Alice walks through door 0, she reaches the table of contents, where nobody has ever been, like nothing had ever happened. The serpent begs Alice to answer him, to tell him her secret, and so she begins to tell a story, before ending immediately. What a weirdo. As Alice leaves, the serpent tries to stop her, but as he said before, he cannot leave the manor. The light of room 431 shuts off as the serpent complains before we hear a ding sound. A new guest has arrived in room 431, but not just one guest, many guests. They keep arriving as the serpent remains in shock, and the light for room 666 finally turns on. The book has been completed. Suddenly, the serpent begins to gain immense power. We see the guest of room 666, who is immediately devoured by the serpent, and so are the others. The serpent devours the samurai core guy. He devours the bird, Erakram, that weird insane teacher guy, and even the lady who just wanted to be beautiful. Even the clones did not anticipate this, as they get devoured. And finally, the serpent emerges from the book, becoming this completely fucked up monstrosity beyond our understanding, before it emerges from the building that seems to belong to Alice, and devastate the landscape in its new form. And dang, does this thing look cool. I would also like to emphasize that it has the same eye marks we saw in those strange war machines that Alice was navigating through, which is very interesting. Either way, the serpent is finally free. He can finally experience reality as he crushes a building with a laughter. But the weird thing is, there is no joy for the serpent in this moment. There is no sense of anything really. And he quickly realizes that nobody is here. Out of anger, he destroys a massive part of the city, but again, nobody is there. Nobody except Alice, ready to continue her story. She says that a long time ago, there was an ill princess who only found comfort in reading, her dream being to see the outside world that she could not see. However, she did have a talent, eidetic memory. This is what fueled her, an obsession towards knowledge. And here is where we finally get the reason why this manga is called Bibliomania. The same word being used as an obsession for collecting books, which the princess did plenty of. Using all of this knowledge, she created the one and only Ultra Book of Knowledge, and this book was called the Book of Truth, turning her into this giant monster who proceeded to let havoc onto the world by absorbing all human emotions and knowledge from people. Those same machines we saw in all those previous panels were used to stop the monster, with little to no effect, until they had one last trump card, to seal the monster in this big metal ball thing, I think. This is the same ball from where the monster in chapter 1 emerged from, and most importantly, this is also where Alice's treasure trove is located. And goddamn, if all that is not insane, then I don't know what is. Anyways, the monster was defeated and the world was left in peace. The humans used the knowledge to create copies of the book, only to use them as warfare, also creating the serpent in the process, who was supposed to be used as warfare to destroy enemies. However, the facility was burned and some surviving copies of the book scattered across the world, explaining to us how those select few entered the manor in the first place. Everyone sort of lived in ignorance to what happened, but not forever, as in just 180 years, the book opened once again, showing us the catastrophe from chapter 1, caused by the same monster who was sealed here, and for the first time, we can see some humanity in Bibliomania, human fears and curiosity, and of course greedy people trying to profit, with the majority trying their best to find ways to avoid this insanity. Upon witnessing this amazing artwork, the whole world united once again, and called upon the warfare from the past, using it to their best effort, but this time it was not enough, and as the panel says, the book had won, wiping out all of humanity. Then Alice explains how the book filled up so quickly after she left. Remember those tied up humans screaming for help in Alice's weird dungeon? She basically just shoved them in, and if you couldn't tell, this is because Alice is the original book. She's the one who destroyed all of humanity. She is the princess, and as the serpent begs her to stop in fear, she transforms into this beautiful yet insanely scary butterfly moth thing, and proceeds to roast the shit out of the serpent, telling him that she did all of this knowing the outcome. She wanted to see what the serpent can do, and at the end, it was all just for fun. Now, I would like you to feel that. Imagine being created one day to be sealed in a book, and your only purpose in life was to be used as a war machine, capable of killing millions for the sake of a nation you don't even understand. Only by luck do you escape that fate, but you cannot lead the book, and the only thing you know is that your book must reach 666 pages, and only then you will be free. And it happens, the book fills up, you leave, and realize that your freedom is not actually freedom, yet an even worse prison than what you've been through your entire existence. This prison being your eternal inferiority to the original book, and now the original is about to end your life like you never existed in the first place. This serpent deserved better. Right after this, Alice toys with him, and then begins to devour him, absorbing all of his information into her. The serpent asks her one last question. What good will absorbing the information be? And Alice just replies that she does not know. It is meaningless, but it's just her desire and her happiness. The book had won. It now contained all the information it could ever contain. But by the end of it all, there is nobody left to read it anymore, and Bibliomania ends with a shot of the doll with a butterfly sitting on top of it. The ending of this manga is extremely dark and grim. The whole world is destroyed and there is nobody left, and seemingly the villain won. But is that actually the case? The real Alice, aka the princess, never experienced the outside world, only learned about it by reading books, hoping that she could know what it's like to live outside by doing so, dreaming of the day she could do that. But no matter how much she reads, she never feels that way. She learns everything about the world and turns herself into a monster, destroying what she sought to experience. And now she is going to be forever trapped in this barren, destroyed world without anyone around, forever chained by her desire as she lands on that ripped doll. Bibliomania is a story that covers many themes: revenge, freedom, the past binding us, the cruelty of time, and desire. It is a story with no good and bad, and many things are left up to interpretation. And despite some minor criticisms, I loved it. And this is why the creators of this manga should be very proud of their work. This is why Bibliomania is an underground masterpiece, and should be on my anime list instead of fucking High School Musical. Alright, so thank you for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please consider subscribing. I am recording this as I am mid-editing the video, so I have no idea what this video will become by the end. This is completely unscripted. I just wanted to correct myself on some mistakes and overlooks that I made. So for example, the way panels are done in this manga is extremely fucking cool. The way, for example, the serpent's tails go completely out of the panel, or how sometimes the hands go out of the panels. All of this stuff is extremely cool. I also wanted to talk about how that woman in that room where she was bedridden in, Alice shows a lot of compassion for her because she can relate to her a lot. And I also overlooked this, and I think it's just super cool as well. I'm also sorry if the mic quality right now sounds a ton better than what it sounded like in the whole video. This is because my microphone was having issues when I was first recording the script, and I got very lazy to do it again. So, I mean, I don't really care, to be honest, but I hope you're not really bothered by it. It's gonna be way better in the next video. And speaking on the next video, it is going to be about Jujutsu Kaisen, and I hope it will come out very soon. As always, if you enjoyed this video, I said this already, but I'll say it again, please consider subscribing with notifications, of course. Consider joining the Discord. We talk about stupid stuff all the time there, so if you like that stuff, please join. And as always, take care of yourselves and have a good night.